Chapter 11 Who is the Wise Person? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Ruozhu remembered her past life, when she'd made preserved apricots. She'd been working in the States for a boss who owned a few apricot trees. He was too lazy to pick the ripe fruit himself, so he told Bai Ruozhu to pick some of the good ones for him and toss the rest. She hated to see them go to waste, so she took them home. But apricots don't keep long, so she found some recipes online and gave it a shot. Turns out, she was pretty good at making apricot preserves. They talked about making preserved apricots for ages. Guizhi was having such a good time that she lost track of time. Then Lin Ping'er called them for dinner, and Guizhi suddenly smacked her forehead. Oh, crap. My mom told me to get soy sauce. I'm gonna get yelled at. Lin Ping'er couldn't convince her to stay. Guizhi's mom didn't just yell, she'd hit her if she was in a bad mood. Watching Guizhi practically run off, Bai Ruozhu and Lin Ping'er couldn't help but sigh. Every family has its own cross to bear. The next day, when it was time to go to market, Bai Yihong was worried about Bai Ruozhu and insisted that Bai Ziho go with her and her mom. Bai Ruozhu felt helpless, but she couldn't refuse her family's concern to keep Bai Ruozhu from getting too tired. Bai Ziho had her and her mother ride on a villager's ox cart, while he walked alongside to save money. Bai Ruozhu looked at her brother's honest, sunny face and felt even more determined to make money quickly. He was about to get married, and they barely had enough for a decent wedding. Luckily, Haoshan village wasn't too far from town, and they arrived pretty quickly. Their village, named for the big mountain behind it, was called Haoshan village. The closest town was Anyuan town, a trading hub because of its location in the northwest. The biggest city was Beiyu city, several days away by horse-drawn carriage. Beiyu city was the largest in Yenzhou and an important trading center in the northwest, with a canal leading straight to the capital. Bai Ruozhu had learned all this from her second brother in the last few days. Her predecessor hadn't been interested in such things, so she hadn't known much about the area. She'd told her family that some things were hazy in her memory, and she needed to ask questions. Bai Zipe had patiently explained everything without any suspicion. Lin Ping'er had brought some eggs and vegetables to sell at the market. Because it would be crowded, she specifically told Bai Ruozhu to stay put, asking Bai Ziho to keep her company and check with the restaurants to see if they wanted to buy her soup base mix. Honestly, Lin Ping'er didn't expect to make much money. She just wanted Bai Ruozhu to relax. Besides, she had nothing to worry about with her older brother looking after her. Bai Ruozhu took her brother to the East Market, where a famous restaurant called In Kulai was located. They found it easily. As they walked in, the shopkeeper greeted them with a smile. Eat in or take out? He noticed she was pregnant and wanted to give her special attention. Bai Ziho looked to Bai Ruozhu, remembering that she told him to follow her lead. Shopkeeper, my brother and I are hoping to sell you some spices. Could we talk to you for a moment? Bai Ruozhu got straight to the point. The shopkeeper sized them up, wondering. The local spice merchants were regulars. He'd never seen these two before. Were they from out of town? But their accents sounded local. Sure, come on in. The shopkeeper, still curious, led them to the backyard. So, what spices does the lady want to sell? He asked. Bai Ruozhu cringed at the term little lady. It reminded her of sleazy rich guys in costume dramas hitting on women. She bit back a grimace. What else could she do, being a pregnant woman? She carefully pulled out the packet of soup base mix, opened it, and said, I made some of this soup base mix a few days ago, and I think it's special. I thought it would be amazing to use when entertaining VIPs in a big restaurant like this. That's why I wanted to share it with you. Oh. The shopkeeper thought Bai Ruozhu looked like a scholar's wife. Her Mandarin was clear and polite. He started to take her a little more seriously and became somewhat interested in the powder in her hand. He cautiously dipped a finger in to sample it, showing that he knew what he was doing. Bai Ruozhu secretly nodded, glad she'd chosen this restaurant. The shopkeeper tasted it, nodded approvingly, and asked, "Not bad. How much of this soup base mix do you have?" "Just this one pack." Bai Ruozhu wanted to say more, but how could she explain it if Bai Ziho asked questions? Even if he wasn't here, she didn't want to attract too much attention. The shopkeeper chuckled. "Well, come back again, little lady. Such a small amount isn't really worth our time, and I couldn't make you a fair offer." The shopkeeper looked decent enough, but his yellow teeth were a turn-off for Bai Ruozhu. Maybe it was her past job, but she had a hard time looking at yellow teeth without wanting to scrub them clean. It was like a compulsion, but Bai Ruozhu quickly realized that teeth brushing wasn't a thing here. The shopkeeper wasn't the only one with yellow teeth, plenty of people in the village did too. Even her family, while clean, didn't have especially white teeth. Bai Ruozhu started thinking. She should popularize oral hygiene in this era, starting with her own family. It would be good for their health and easier on her eyes. Bai Ziho nudged Bai Ruozhu. "Little sister, should we go?" Bai Ruozhu snapped back to reality and shook her head regretfully. The shopkeeper's ignorance was a loss for his restaurant. Bai Ruozhu said nothing, repackaged the soup base mix, and followed Bai Ziho out. Suddenly, an old voice called from the courtyard, "Let me see that stuff." "Oh, that's our boss." The shopkeeper looked nervous and bowed respectfully toward the inner room. Then he said to Bai Ruozhu, "That's our owner in there. Show it to him." Bai Ruozhu hadn't realized anyone else was around, especially the real owner. She turned and headed toward the voice, hoping to find someone with some sense. Worried, Bai Ziho followed closely behind. As Bai Ruozhu opened the door, she saw an old man with white hair and a beard sitting at a table, drinking tea. Behind him stood a middle-aged man in his 40s, his eyes sharp and watchful. He gave Bai Ruozhu and Bai Ziho a wary look. Bai Ruozhu guessed that the man knew martial arts and was probably the old man's guard. She kept her distance and opened the soup base mix at a safe range. Sure enough, the middle-aged man stepped forward, took a dip, tasted it, and nodded to the old man. Chapter 12, Selling Fresh Soup Noodles. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The old man stroked his beard and chuckled, his kind face and easy smile suggesting he was approachable. "This stuff you've got is small batch, which means it's gotta be pricey. What makes it so special?" he asked. "Sir," Bai Ruozhu replied, "it's called fresh soup powder. It works best when you add it while you're making soup. Or, you could have someone bring 2 bowls of the same soup. Put some of the powder in one bowl and compare the taste. You'll get it." "Alright, fetch 2 bowls of soup," the old man instructed the shopkeeper, who stood respectfully outside, not daring to enter without being told. The shopkeeper hurried off and soon returned with a tray holding 2 bowls of soup. Bai Ruozhu sprinkled some fresh soup powder into one of the bowls, stirred it carefully, and announced, "All set." The old man reached for a spoon, but the middle-aged man behind him stopped him. "Sir, let me. I need to taste this myself. These 2 have honest eyes, I can tell they wouldn't try to harm me." The old man chuckled, putting his nervous bodyguard at ease. Hearing the old man praise them, Bai Ziho said with pride, "You've got good taste, sir. We're responsible people. We've even tried this soup powder at home, it tastes amazing." Bai Ruozhu winked at her older brother. Good looks ran in the family. Her younger brother was the best-looking and most refined, but he was a scholar. Her older brother wasn't bad either, while not as gentle as their younger brother, he was steady and reliable, making him easy to like. The old man nodded, tasted the plain soup, and commented, "The chef's getting better. Keep at it." The shopkeeper beamed. "Thank you for the kind words, boss. I'll keep an eye on the kitchen." The old man then tried the soup with the fresh soup powder. He took a sip, and then another, remaining silent for a long moment. Everyone in the room watched him, wondering what he thought. Bai Ziho nervously clenched his fists, but Bai Ruozhu remained calm. She was confident that true food lovers would appreciate her soup powder. It wasn't made from ordinary fish, shrimp, or shellfish, it was a precise blend, and the seafood from her space was incredibly delicious, unlike anything ordinary. Finally, the old man eagerly drank the soup, his expression showing his enjoyment. Wow! This is fresh soup. Really fresh and rich, not greasy at all, with a flavor that lingers. He exclaimed after nearly finishing the bowl. Sir, you know your stuff, Bai Ruozhu said, giving him a thumbs up. The shopkeeper blushed, realizing he had almost missed out on something incredible. He wasn't as discerning as his boss. What's your asking price? The old man chuckled, wiping his mouth. I don't have a lot, and I only got it by chance. How about you name a price, and if it works for you, I'll sell it, to help you take care of your guests. Bai Ruozhu said with a smile. The old man stroked his beard and laughed. This young lady is quite the charmer. Bai Ruozhu smiled and bowed respectfully. I wouldn't presume to be anything special in front of you, sir. The old man laughed. I'm a straightforward guy. How about 30 taels of silver? Bai Ruozhu was thrilled. She thought she'd be lucky to get 10 taels, which would be a nice boost for her family. But she kept her composure, nodded, and said, that's a fair offer. I have no objections. However, I do have one condition. The old man added. Please, sir, go ahead, Bai Ruozhu replied, knowing it couldn't be that simple. You need to tell me where else I can get this stuff. What happens when I run out? The old man stared at her, scrutinizing her as if he could see through any lies. Bai Ruozhu tried to stay calm. She had already thought this through. She had originally planned to say that she knew how to make it and could supply the restaurant long-term, creating a steady income for her family. But she quickly changed her mind, especially when the old man offered 30 taels right off the bat. She had learned that it was best not to attract too much attention and that, since her family had no power or connections, she needed to be careful. Getting too greedy could cause trouble, so, Bai Ruozhu fabricated a story. The old man watched her intently, but she didn't even blink. He didn't believe everything, but he bought at least 70 to 80% of it. The town often had visitors from other countries. A passing merchant could have brought seasonings from somewhere far away. The old man, named Shenlu, was the founder of Inkalai. Even though he was staying in this small northwestern town, he was a worldly man. He doubted it was the Turkic country to the north. Those barbarians barely knew how to add salt and chili to their barbecue, so how could they make such fresh soup noodles? More likely, it was Qingshui country in the southeast. Qingshui country was rich in spices and the emperor favored fine dining. It must have been brought here by Qingshui merchants. But why would merchants from Qingshui country go to that tiny village she mentioned? Shenlu wondered. Do you remember what that person looked like? Shenlu asked, trying to sound casual. Bai Ruozhu pretended to think hard. I remember he had dark skin, a square face, and small, bright eyes. If I don't meet your needs, sir, maybe you should lower the price. Shenlu waved his hand. It doesn't matter, I just appreciate your honesty. He looked at Bai Ruozhu, his eyes twinkling. Old habits die hard, Bai Ruozhu thought, keeping a straight face. I wouldn't dare hide anything from you. Shenlu stroked his beard again, putting on a friendly smile. The money is still 30 taels. Consider the extra little something for the baby on the way. Bai Ruozhu and Bai Ziho quickly bowed and thanked him. Shenlu waved to the shopkeeper to take them to get the money. They said their goodbyes and left with the shopkeeper. Bai Ruozhu breathed a sigh of relief, glad she had managed to conceal the truth. She had her father to thank for her skill in lying. When she was a kid, her father, a gambler, would come home and demand money from her mother, threatening or beating them both. He'd always ask, "Where's the money?" If Bai Ruozhu hesitated or seemed guilty, her father would beat her up. Eventually, she learned to lie without batting an eye, often crying and saying, "We really don't have any money. I haven't even paid my tuition yet." She'd hand it over, and the beatings would stop. She smiled to herself, she really should thank her father. Chapter 13, the episode of taking medicine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The shopkeeper, a decent guy, led them to the back office, handing Bai Ruozhu 25 taels of silver, plus another 5. Bai Ruozhu told Bai Zhuge to carefully stash the 25 taels, while she pocketed the loose 5 taels. Bai Zhuge was usually calm, and even with the joy of the moment, his face didn't betray any excitement, leaving the shopkeeper guessing about their background. As they left, ready to greet the day, Bai Ruozhu, worried about carrying so much cash, told Bai Zhuge, "Head on home, I'll hit the market, find mom, and then grab a donkey cart back." Bai Zhuge got the message immediately, but he hesitated to leave her alone. He wanted her to take the money, but that felt wrong too. What if the shopkeeper was playing a long game and snatched it back, leaving his sister in the lurch? "How about I walk you to mom's first, then rush back?" Bai Zhuge asked, concerned. Bai Ruozhu shook her head. "The market's packed. You should go first." "I'll be careful, I'm not a kid anymore. Have some faith in me, bro." Bai Zhuge opened his mouth, then decided to trust her judgment. If they were being targeted, splitting up would make Bai Ruozhu safer. Then find mom quick. If she's not at the market, leave a message and head straight home. Don't hang around too long, Bai Zhuge instructed. "Okay, got it. You get going. Take the donkey cart, don't be cheap," Bai Ruozhu said, trying to press some coins into his hand, but Bai Zhuge pushed them back. "Mom gave me coins. You just keep your own spending money." Years later, when the siblings were tossing around 100-tael notes without a second thought, they'd chuckle about how stressed they were over 25 taels of silver. Bai Zhuge headed off, and Bai Ruozhu turned toward the market, though not directly to her mother. She went to a pharmacy near the market instead. Now that she had the idea to make toothpaste, she planned to recreate the Chinese herbal toothpaste she had been so proud of in her previous life. She needed to pick up some medicinal ingredients at the pharmacy, making a basic version with inexpensive ingredients first, or else no one would want to pay for it. She told the clerk the ingredients that she needed, and he began gathering them. However, he was unfamiliar with 2 of the ingredients, so he excused himself to ask the shopkeeper for assistance. Before the clerk returned, a well-dressed young man entered the pharmacy. Assuming he was a customer, Bai Ruozhu stepped aside to make way for him, only to see him stride straight to the backyard. Soon, his voice echoed from the back. Bai Ruozhu had no intention of eavesdropping, but he was practically shouting. "Shopkeeper Zhou, I don't care how you do it, this month's sales have to meet the family's numbers, or I'll be in the doghouse again." The young man's tone was sharp, hinting at severe consequences. "Third young master, I'll do my best, I promise," the shopkeeper responded solemnly, but the young man only grew angrier. "You said you'd do your best last month, but what good is trying? If you can't sell enough product, we might as well hire a doctor and sell prescriptions instead." "Third young master, no. The old man always said we only sell ingredients, not diagnoses. Hiring a doctor temporarily would ruin the shop's reputation if their skills weren't up to par," the shopkeeper said anxiously. Bai Ruozhu nodded in agreement. The shopkeeper made a good point. You can't be careless with medical treatment. The young master was clearly too young and eager. "Then tell me, what else can I do?" The young master snapped. The clerk piped up, hoping to de-escalate the situation. "Sir, shopkeeper, there's a customer out front waiting for some medicine. I don't recognize a couple of the ingredients, and the shopkeeper needs to take a look." The shopkeeper gratefully seized the opportunity. "Third young master, I'll get the medicine for the guest, and be right back." He hurried out, smiling apologetically at Bai Ruozhu. "Sorry for the wait, ma'am." "No problem, just help me find those ingredients," Bai Ruozhu replied politely, but she didn't expect the young master to follow, watching the shopkeeper like a hawk. Only then did Bai Ruozhu get a good look at the young man. He was maybe 18 or 19, not much older than her. Still practically a kid, the shopkeeper quickly gathered Bai Ruozhu's items. Taking a closer look, Bai Ruozhu noticed the clerk had made a mistake with one of the herbs. "Shopkeeper, you got the wrong purple flower root," Bai Ruozhu pointed out. The shopkeeper said quickly, "Did ma'am want purple lily? I'm truly sorry, I'll exchange it for you right now." Then he glared at the server, "Why don't you pick out the one you made the mistake of?" That the clerk scratched his head. The customer was right, she wanted the purple lilac, but he seemed to have opened the wrong drawer. The young man next to him said sternly, "No wonder business is bad if you can't even get the right herbs." The shopkeeper looked embarrassed and said respectfully, "You are right. I will pay more attention in the future." The young man lowered his head and apologized profusely. The young man glanced at him and said, "Forget it, don't choose. The extra medicine will be given to the guests for free. I think she knows about medicinal materials, and maybe she can use it too. Get on." The last sentence was asked to Bai Ruozhu. Bai Ruozhu nodded towards him and said politely, "Thank you very much, sir. The clerk was careless and gave me the wrong medicinal material, which was azalea. There was not much difference in price between the two, so it was a good thing to sell a favor. Sir, this extra medicine may affect this lady's prescription." The shopkeeper said worriedly. The young master glared at him and said, "I said you don't know how to adapt. This lady knows how to read medicinal materials herself. The medicines she asked for were not special prescriptions. Maybe she can give them azaleas. Put it to other uses." Bai Ruozhu couldn't help but glance at the young master again. This man looked young, but he had good eyesight. The boy has rewrapped the purple flower patch for Bai Ruozhu and handed it to Bai Ruozhu. The somewhat arrogant young master bowed politely to Bai Ruozhu and said, "Madam, our shop clerk was careless and caused you trouble. I will give you a 20% discount on the cost of this medicine." As soon as he said this, the shopkeeper immediately looked at the young master. The business in the store was not up to standard. Why was the young master still so generous? Chapter 14 Initial Negotiations on Cooperation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Ruozhu nodded. "Okay, thanks. No need for excessive politeness." In her mind, the customer deserved compensation. If she were running the place, she might even offer a 50% discount. Filling the wrong prescription could be a minor inconvenience or a major disaster. Someone unfamiliar with the ingredients might cook it up at home and end up poisoned. She used some of the silver she had to pay, then turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps. "I have a business proposal that might suit your pharmacy. Would you be interested?" Bai Ruozhu asked, turning back suddenly. The young master seemed caught off guard by the pregnant woman's entrepreneurial pitch. He paused, then replied, "Sure, please follow me to the back. We can discuss it there." Bai Ruozhu was relieved that society wasn't too uptight. She wasn't likely to be ostracized for being pregnant or for discussing business with a man in public. If the era had been more rigidly conservative, this would have been a problem. Once in the backyard, the young master, concerned about her standing for too long, offered her a seat. A good sign, Bai Ruozhu thought. Her instincts were right. "I'd like to suggest selling toothpaste in your shop," Bai Ruozhu said, getting straight to the point. "Toothpaste?" the young master asked, surprised. He couldn't help feeling the woman was a little unusual. Though plainly dressed, she carried herself with the air of a scholar. Interesting. The young master thought to himself. Despite her pregnancy, she had the sharp, bright eyes of a young girl. He'd been learning to read people since childhood. He couldn't be wrong. Very strange indeed. "My name is Bai. And you are?" Bai Ruozhu asked, feeling awkward calling herself little woman with her obvious pregnancy. She still couldn't believe she was a woman now. Dou Zhongshu. "I'm the young owner of Dou's pharmacy," the young man replied. "Okay, Mr. Dou, let's talk toothpaste," Bai Ruozhu continued. "It's for cleaning teeth, made from medicinal ingredients. I once heard about it from a traveling monk. Regular use not only whitens teeth and freshens breath, but also helps prevent toothaches and bleeding gums. Bai Ruozhu wanted to introduce the concept of toothbrushes, but she didn't know how to make one. She knew that people in ancient times used salt and chewed on willow branches, but the results weren't great. She'd considered horsehair bristles, but horses weren't easily accessible to commoners, so she left out the toothbrush. With toothpaste alone, people could still clean their teeth using a finger or cloth. Really? If it works as you say, it should be a great seller, Dou E replied, smiling and revealing his teeth. Bai Ruozhu couldn't help but admire the advantages of the wealthy. He was young with healthy teeth, and clearly had the resources to maintain them. I'm going to buy some materials and try to make some myself. If I'm successful, I'd like to partner with you to sell it, Bai Ruozhu said. Dou E was a man of action. Then you get started. I'll cover the initial costs, he said, immediately producing 5 taels of silver and handing them to Bai Ruozhu. Bai Ruozhu hesitated. He just believed her story and offered her money. Was he naive, or just generous? And wasn't he just complaining about business earlier? Aren't you worried I'll take the money and disappear? Bai Ruozhu asked. Dou E laughed, his eyes sparkling. His good looks became even more striking. He's very handsome, Bai Ruozhu thought. It'll be a pleasure working with him. Doing business involves risk. If I let fear hold me back, I might miss out on a great opportunity. The worst case is I lose 5 taels of silver. I'll just have to consider it a lesson. Besides, do you seem like a con artist, Mrs. Bai? Bai Ruozhu touched her belly and laughed. Even in modern times, people rarely swindled others while visibly pregnant, let alone in this simpler time. I just overheard you saying business was slow, so I was concerned. Forget the money. Wait until you're on firmer ground, Bai Ruozhu suggested, reasoning she already had enough money to buy ingredients. Why make things harder on him? Dou E laughed even louder. You worry too much. My family assigned me to manage this shop. If I don't meet their expectations, I'll face the consequences. I'm not short on cash, it's just that I'm keeping my personal finances separate. Bai Ruozhu felt a little awkward. She'd wanted to do a good deed, but she had the wrong idea. They weren't hurting for money at all. In that case, I won't argue. I'll bring you a sample in 7 days. If I can't make it work, I'll return the 5 taels, Bai Ruozhu said, taking the silver. It was obvious refusing it would be an insult. You're a straightforward person. I'll be waiting, Dou E said, standing as Bai Ruozhu prepared to leave. All right, deal. When Bai Ruozhu reached the market, she was relieved to see her mother hadn't sold all her vegetables. Seeing her from a distance, her mother called out, "Daughter, what are you doing here alone? Where's your brother?" Bai Ruozhu thought quickly. He went to pick something up. We're meeting him. Let's go find him now. Lin Ping'er looked surprised. Why does your brother have to follow you around everywhere? Bai Ruozhu reached her mother, took her arm, and gave it a squeeze. Mom, I'm feeling heavy. Let's just go home, okay? Please, let's go get brother. Okay, let's head back, Lin Ping'er said. Getting the hint, she glanced at her daughter, saw her bright eyes, and understood. She quickly packed up her basket, grabbed Bai Ruozhu's arm, and left the market. In a quiet spot, Bai Ruozhu looked around, then whispered to Lin Ping'er, "Mom, I sold everything. I asked him to take the money home." Lin Ping'er understood that everything meant the fresh soup noodles. How much did you make? She asked, surprised. Chapter 15. The Bai family is lucky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let's talk about this at home, Mom. 30 taels of silver is a fortune for a family like ours. If Mom knew, she'd be over the moon. Lin Ping'er didn't press for details. They found a donkey cart and headed straight back to Househan village. The cart dropped them off at the village entrance. From afar, they saw Bai Ziho waiting, his face flushed from the sun, his shadow long behind him. He looked anxious, probably worried sick about his mother and sister. Relief washed over him when he spotted them, and he hurried to meet them. "Mom, sis, you're back. Dad was worried you'd be tired, sis, so he sent me to fetch you." Bai Ruozhu grinned. "Someone thinks I'm made of glass," Bai Ruozhu teased, winking at her brother. He winked back, equally amused. Lin Ping'er was puzzled. What kind of inside joke did these two have going? Were they going back to their childhood antics? The moment they stepped inside, Bai Yihong and Bai Zipei were waiting in the main room. Looked like a family meeting was about to commence. Bai Ruozhu bolted the door before joining them. "Daughter, you really helped us out this time," Bai Yihong said, his face flushed with a mix of excitement and gratitude, keeping his voice down. Lin Ping'er couldn't contain herself. "How much did the noodle soup go for?" Bai Ruozhu quickly shushed her. "Mom, quiet. We got 30 taels. "What?" Lin Ping'er exclaimed, then lowered her voice in disbelief. "Seriously," but when she saw Bai Ruozhu and Bai Ruozhu nodding and smiling, and Bai Yihong beaming, she knew it was true. "That's amazing." Lin Ping'er's face lit up, overjoyed. But her expression turned serious. "Ruozhu, you did the right thing. We should get your brother married right away. Nobody outside this family can know a thing about this, especially not your grandma or your uncle." Bai Yihong looked slightly embarrassed but nodded solemnly. Bai Ruozhu and Bai Zipei readily agreed. If their relatives got wind of this, there wouldn't be a tail left. "Mom, now that we have some money, we should get the ball rolling on Ruozhu's betrothal gifts to the Wang family," Bai Ruozhu suggested, smiling. Bai Ruozhu couldn't help but blush. As the eldest son, he hadn't done much to support the family. His sister was the one arranging his marriage. He choked up and exclaimed, "Little sister." Lin Ping'er was touched by the siblings' bond. "Ruozhu's right, it's time to take care of this. And whatever's left over, we'll use to help Ruozhu get her strength back." The whole family agreed, Bai Yihong adding, "Our luck's finally turning around." 30 taels of silver was more than half a year's income. This windfall could really change things for the Bai family. Lin Ping'er was already itching to discuss the betrothal gifts with Bai Yihong. Bai Ruozhu and Bai Zipei excused themselves. Bai Ruozhu wasn't needed for the talks, but before she left, she pulled out the remaining 4 taels of silver and handed it to Lin Ping'er. "Mom, I want to buy some medicinal herbs and experiment with some things. I have over 4 taels left." She didn't mention the 5 taels from Du Zhongshu yet. Her toothpaste idea wasn't fully baked yet, and it felt weird to bring him up. She'd save that money as startup capital for her future medicinal herb purchases. "Don't give it to me. Keep it for yourself and buy things for yourself and the baby," Lin Ping'er insisted, pushing the money back. "Mom, I'm taken care of here. What do I need money for? You trying to kick me out?" Bai Ruozhu said jokingly. Lin Ping'er recoiled. "Never. As long as your father and I are alive, nobody's driving you anywhere." Bai Yihong remained silent, a shadow crossing his face. He wanted to keep his daughter forever, but what would become of her? If they never found a cure, would she be a widow forever? She was still so young. He resolved to save as much as he could so she could remarry in a few years with a generous dowry, ensuring she'd marry into a good family. In the end, Lin Ping'er only accepted 2 taels, insisting that Bai Ruozhu keep the rest for herself since she was the one who earned it. The whole family was benefiting from her efforts, and she felt guilty taking such a small amount. After Bai Ruozhu left the room, Bai Yihong sighed to Lin Ping'er, "We're strapped for cash, otherwise we should save this money for our daughter's dowry." "You want Ruozhu to remarry?" Lin Ping'er asked, surprised. "We can't let her suffer forever. We'll find her a good match in a few years," Bai Yihong said wistfully. Lin Ping'er didn't reply, but she was worried. Her daughter was wonderful in every way, polite, kind, and hardworking. But her situation wasn't ideal. Would remarrying really be that easy? Back in her room, Bai Ruozhu figured that whether the money was hers or not, it was a good excuse to improve the food at home and buy some needed things, especially a new calligraphy brush for her brother. It wasn't easy for a farmer's family to support a scholar. Her brother was sensible and thrifty. He used to copy books to earn money, but with the exams coming up, their mother wouldn't let him get distracted. She noticed the cuffs of her mother's clothes were worn thin and patched. The last time she'd seen her aunt, her uncle's wife, she was wearing brand new clothes without a single patch, and her father, who used to enjoy a drink or two, hadn't bought wine in ages because of their financial struggles. Feeling a pang of sadness, Bai Ruozhu asked her brother to get a piece of tofu from the village shop to bake for dinner. Bai Zhuge offered to go with her, but she talked him out of it. "Brother, just go water and fertilize the vegetable patch in the backyard. The tofu shop's just a few steps away," she insisted. Bai Zhuge figured that after the village chief dealt with the Lu family, nobody in the village would dare cause trouble for her. Carrying her basket, Bai Ruozhu went to the tofu shop and bought a piece of tofu. Then, finding a secluded spot, she slipped into her space, caught a plump fish in the pond, and returned. Chapter 16. The goal is to have no cavities. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as she hauled in the fish, the baby gave her a kick, or more like a happy dance, from inside. Bai Ruozhu chuckled, "Hey, little one, are you a foodie already? Greedy for fish?" The baby moved a couple more times, as if answering or maybe protesting the foodie label. Back home, Lin Ping'er and Bai Yihong had wrapped up their chat. Lin Ping'er was in the yard, feeding the pigs, and looked relieved to see Bai Ruozhu. She gave her a light scolding. "Next time, tell me what you need. Don't wear yourself out." "Mom, I'm not that delicate," Bai Ruozhu said, a bit spoiled. "Look what I got," she grinned and held up the big fish. "Fish head tofu soup for everyone tonight. It's gonna be delicious." Bai Yihong saw the size of the fish and quickly took it, worried it was too heavy for her. "Wow, where'd you get such a big one?" Lin Ping'er asked, surprised. "I saw a fish guy with a donkey cart at the village entrance. He gave me a deal on the last one," Bai Ruozhu said, sticking her tongue out playfully. She had to fib to cover for her space stash. "Good, fish is good for you, both you and the baby," Bai Yihong said, heading to the well in the back. "I'll clean it up." After the fish was cleaned and gutted, Bai Ruozhu got to work, making fish head tofu soup and chopping the leftover fish into pieces for fish balls. She added some to the soup and stir-fried the rest with veggies in a sweet and sour sauce. The whole family was drooling from the smells. Lin Ping'er muttered, "I never realized Ruozhu was so talented in the kitchen." Bai Yihong chuckled, "Your precious daughter used to be a wild child, never let her near the stove. But she picks things up fast from me." Lin Ping'er laughed, seeing his proud face. "Don't flatter yourself." Bai Ruozhu went over and looped an arm through each of her parents. "I learned fast from Dad and got Mom's knack for flavor. Aren't I lucky?" Bai Yihong and Lin Ping'er couldn't help but laugh. Lin Ping'er playfully tapped Bai Ruozhu's head. "You show off." The family ate until they were stuffed, everyone happy and feeling refreshed. 6 days flew by, and Bai Ruozhu had made a batch of toothpaste. It wasn't quite the formula she remembered from her past life, but it was still pretty special for this time. Unfortunately, she was limited by what she had available, and the toothpaste was a dark brown color, which wasn't very appealing. "Ruozhu, you're saying this stuff cleans your teeth?" Bai Zhuge asked, skeptical. Bai Ruozhu was trying to promote her product to the family. "You've been messing with herbs all this time just for brushing your teeth. We have tooth powder, you know. Herbs are expensive." Bai Zhuge's words stung a little, but Bai Ruozhu just smiled. "It's cheap to make in large amounts. The effect is way better than tooth powder. Just rub some on your teeth with a cloth. I'll show you." She dipped the handkerchief in the brown paste and demonstrated brushing. After rinsing, the whole family followed suit. "Does this stuff help with swelling or pain?" Bai Zhuge suddenly asked. He'd been quieter lately, holed up in his room, studying. Even at the last family meeting, he barely said anything. Bai Ruozhu nodded. Yeah, it helps with mouth sores and bleeding gums. Keep using it, and your teeth will get whiter. You'll get fewer cavities and other mouth problems. When she was making the toothpaste, Bai Ruozhu had joked that in this lifetime, her ultimate goal was to have no cavities. Bai Ruozhu nodded, still quiet, but Bai Ruozhu gave him a look. Second brother, do you have mouth sores? Just a little something, it'll be fine, Bai Ruozhu said, looking uncomfortable. He was being unusually stiff. No wonder he hadn't been talking. He probably felt self-conscious and didn't want to worry anyone. Son, don't burn yourself out studying, Bai Yihong said gently. Just do your best. Bai Ruozhu thought Bai Yihong was great. Unlike some fathers who pushed their kids relentlessly, all he said was do your best. It showed that he cared more about Bai Ruozhu's well-being. Yeah, second brother, you'll do better on the exam if you're feeling good, Ruozhu said, handing him a box of toothpaste. Use this morning and night. I have plenty. It'll go bad if you don't use it all. Oh, okay, Bai Ruozhu said quietly, barely moving his mouth. Bai Ruozhu guessed he had a pretty bad sore, making it hard to talk. Lin Ping'er said, worried, I'll make you some mung bean soup right now. It'll cool you down. And she hurried off. Later, the family talked more about the toothpaste. They all said it felt cool and refreshing. Of course, their teeth weren't instantly whiter, but they were all supportive of Bai Ruozhu's invention. Bai Ruozhu seized the opportunity to suggest a trip to town to show the toothpaste to the apothecary and buy some baby supplies. Lin Ping'er said, I need to go to town for some things anyway. Let's go together tomorrow and ask your brother to be our bodyguard. Bai Ruozhu covered her mouth, laughing. She knew what Lin Ping'er wanted to buy, stuff for her eldest brother's betrothal. Asking him to come along would make the task of asking for a lower price easier. Even Bai Ruozhu, who was usually calm and collected, blushed at the mention of marriage and chuckled shyly. The next day, the three of them went to town. To save time, Bai Ruozhu suggested splitting up. Bai Ruozhu could go with Lin Ping'er to do her shopping while she went to the apothecary to talk business. Lin Ping'er immediately protested. Have your brother go with you. My stuff isn't heavy, I can manage. Bai Ruozhu didn't want to make it awkward for her brother, so she quickly said, how about you drop me off at the apothecary first? Then you can come find me when you're done. I won't wander off. Lin Ping'er thought that sounded reasonable, so she agreed. She and Bai Ruozhu dropped Bai Ruozhu at the door of Dou's pharmacy and headed to the market. The shopkeeper had been expecting Bai Ruozhu and greeted her with a smile. Mrs. Bai, you're here. Please, come in. The third young master will be here soon. Bai Ruozhu politely thanked the shopkeeper and followed him to the back. The shopkeeper asked a server to make tea for Bai Ruozhu, but she smiled and said, just water is fine. Chapter 17. Is it great to be rich? You are listening at novelfull.audio. It wasn't that Ruozhu worried about what the guy would do, and her past life studying Chinese medicine wasn't for nothing. She just didn't think tea was good for the baby. Shopkeeper Zhou told a waiter to hurry and bring some warm water. A few minutes later, Du Zhongshu rushed in. He was beaming. The second he hit the backyard, he announced, Shopkeeper Zhou, the deal's done. Congrats, Mr. Du. You've aced the test. Zhou said, grinning. That's when Du Zhongshu noticed Bai Ruozhu. He greeted her with a smile, Mrs. Bai, you beat me to it. My apologies. No worries, Ruozhu said, pulling out the box and opening it for him. Here's that toothpaste I mentioned. Du Zhongshu took it, sniffing it curiously. Smells good. How do you use this? Just wipe it on your teeth with a cloth and rinse. You too can try it, Ruozhu suggested. Du Zhongshu asked a boy to bring a cloth and some water, and he tried it right away. Shopkeeper Zhou gave it a shot, too. They both agreed it was great, way more pleasant than tooth powder. The real results, though, would take about 2 weeks. Here's an idea, Ruozhu said. Why doesn't Mr. Dou hand it out as samples to your regulars? Show them how to use it. Once they see how good it is, they'll buy it, and it'll build some buzz. That's smart. Dou Zhongshu said. The old ways weren't big on marketing. Mrs. Bai, you're sharp. So, how are you thinking about the partnership? Ruozhu asked. Just selling the formula felt lame. If she sold a simple recipe and improved it later, people would say she ripped them off. But the really good recipe? She wasn't ready to let that go. Plus, if he didn't see how well it worked, he wouldn't pay what it was worth. Better to partner up, launch a basic version, and then gradually make it better. Or even bring out a premium toothpaste for high-end customers. Dou Zhongshu paused a couple of seconds. See, Mrs. Bai, I was just trying to hustle, trying to get my family off my back. But I closed a deal on some medicinal herbs. So I may be outta here soon. Ruozhu was surprised. Was he saying he was bailing on the toothpaste gig? Honestly, I hate this stuff. If my folks hadn't twisted my arm, I wouldn't bother with any of this business crap. So, forget the toothpaste. Here's 5 taels of silver for your trouble, Dou Zhongshu said, looking a little sheepish. Maybe it was pregnancy hormones, maybe the heat, or maybe Dou Zhongshu was just getting on her nerves, but Ruozhu felt a surge of anger. She'd gone to all this work to prepare the toothpaste, hauled it all the way here, and he was just blowing her off, saying, here, take a few bucks. Like money was the answer to everything. Now I get why your family's making you do this. Someone like you, who can't be bothered, needs a kick in the pants. I thought you were a decent guy, knew how to hustle. Guess I was wrong, Ruozhu said, not holding back. Dou Zhongshu looked awkward. He was worried she'd go into early labor. Mrs. Bai, don't get mad. Are you short on cash? It's not about the money. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, but have you ever thought about whether you deserve it? Have you ever busted your butt to make a better life for your family? I bet you never will. As long as you've got clothes on your back and food on the table. Ruozhu stood up, brushing off her sleeves. Forget it. I wasted my time. Goodbye. Mrs. Bai. Ruozhu's rant had left him speechless. He saw her heading out and was worried about her. Wait, let's talk this over. It's my fault, I didn't think. Please, you're pregnant, don't get upset. Too late. I'm done with you. You're not worth my anger, Ruozhu snapped, heading for the door. Just then, a shout rang out, who's messing with my sister? Thought it was Zhuge, there to pick her up, and he'd overheard everything. He didn't know the details, but he knew Ruozhu was pissed, so he stormed in. Dou Zhongshu was standing in her way. Zhuge grabbed him by the collar, yelling, "What do you think you're doing to my sister?" Ruozhu felt a wave of warmth from her brother standing up for her. She grabbed Zhuge. "Brother, you've got it wrong. He's apologizing. I'm just giving him a piece of my mind." Zhuge figured his sister was too nice, that she must have been taken advantage of. The guy in front of him looked like trouble. He let go of Dou Zhongshu's collar but eyed him suspiciously. "What did you do to upset my sister? Otherwise, why would you be apologizing?" Dou Zhongshu backed away. These two were cut from the same cloth, both with hair-trigger tempers. "Brother, forget it. Let's go." Ruozhu felt better after her tirade. She didn't want to waste any more time. She tugged on Zhuge's arm and headed out. Zhuge shot Dou Zhongshu one last glare. Dou Zhongshu scratched his head. Wow, they are tight. Working hard for family, clothes on your back, food on the table. Ruozhu and her brother walked out of the Dou family medical center. Her mom was standing outside, looking worried and juggling a bunch of bags. "Brother, help mom with those bags," Ruozhu said. Pinger looked Ruozhu up and down, then let out a relieved sigh when she saw her daughter was okay. "Let's get out of here." As they walked away, her mom and brother started firing questions. Ruozhu, what was all that about? Why were you arguing? Ping'er asked. Yeah, I asked you earlier, but you clammed up. Sis, you're too nice. You get pushed around and don't say a word. Why? Zhuge was frustrated. Ruozhu rolled her eyes. Easy to bully. She just laid into that guy like nobody's business. Chapter 18. It's really more unfair than Dou E. You are listening at novelfull.audio. No biggie. We had a deal where I'd make toothpaste and sell it to this kid. But he decided he didn't have the stomach for business, so he paid me off 5 taels as compensation. I was just so ticked off, I had to put him in his place, Bai Ruozhu admitted, then sheepishly stuck out her tongue. Lin Ping'er and Bai Zhuge were stunned. It sounded like Bai Ruozhu was the one doing the bullying. Coming to her senses, Lin Ping'er glared at Bai Ruozhu. Honey, that's not what I raised you to do. If they already paid up to apologize, why'd you have to chew them out? I don't know, Mom. Maybe it's the baby making me cranky, or this dry weather's getting to me, Bai Ruozhu said, fanning herself. Lin Ping'er quickly grabbed a fan and started fanning Bai Ruozhu. Wow, my little sister's got a temper now. Looks like I gotta watch my step around her from now on, Bai Zhuge joked. Bai Ruozhu touched her belly, worried. Could this give the baby a bad temper? Oh man, I should have just kept my mouth shut. Bai Zhuge waved it off. Nah. You always had the sweetest temper, and Changsheng's a good guy too. No way your kid's gonna be a grump. He barely got the words out before their mother secretly pinched him, scolding him for bringing up Changsheng so carelessly. For the old Bai Ruozhu, Changsheng was a sacred thing, but for the new Bai Ruozhu, Changsheng was just a name, someone she has no memory of. Was Changsheng good-tempered? I can't remember anything about him since I hit my head, Bai Ruozhu said, rubbing her head. She'd gotten comfortable enough with her family that she didn't think they'd suspect anything. Besides, she's older now, she remembers most things. Still, Lin Ping'er and Bai Zhuge looked concerned. Lin Ping'er took Bai Ruozhu's hand and said, why didn't you say anything before? How about we have Dr. Li check you out later? Bai Ruozhu waved her hands. Don't waste money on a doctor. Things are finally getting better, so let's not blow it on something unnecessary. I'm sure my memory will come back. I remember everything else, right? Bai Ruozhu said. Lin Ping'er still wanted her to see a doctor, but Bai Ruozhu insisted, the more you remind me, the more I'll remember. Seeing Dr. Li won't do any good, right? Mom, little sister's got a point. I read this thing somewhere about people who had the same problem and slowly remembered everything. Doctors and medicine didn't help, Bai Zhuge chimed in. Bai Ruozhu gave her brother an appreciative look. He was a smart guy, not less knowledgeable than her second brother. Lin Ping'er relented, sighing. I just didn't want you to get upset when we mentioned Changsheng. It's good that you're taking it this way. When they got home, Lin Ping'er took Bai Ruozhu aside and told Bai Yihong about her memory issues. Bai Yihong was taken aback. Dad, Mom, don't worry. I'll probably remember soon. Just tell me about Changsheng, Bai Ruozhu said sweetly. Bai Yihong sighed and said, I'll tell you, sweetie. It's my fault for bringing Changsheng out of that forest in the first place. That's what started all this. Bai Lin Ping'er pursed her lips, not saying anything. Then, Bai Yihong began his story. Apparently, Bai Ruozhu and Changsheng had gone into the back hills to collect firewood when they saw a big, strange yellow flower. Changsheng wanted to pick it and plant it at home. When they picked the flower, something went wrong. Bai Yihong coughed a few times, a little embarrassed, and his explanation was a little vague. But Bai Ruozhu was an adult now and understood the meaning quickly. The yellow flower was called a Haiyang flower, originally used as an aphrodisiac when breeding animals. You rarely saw it in the back hills, but Changsheng and Bai Ruozhu had to stumble upon it. Changsheng was new to town, and he had amnesia, so he didn't know what Haiyang flowers were. Bai Ruozhu came from a girl's family, so she'd never learned about it. No elder would tell this to their unmarried daughter, so the two of them were dumb enough to pick that goat flower. Changxing inhaled a lot of pollen after picking the flowers, so he lost control and did the deed with Bai Ruozhu on the spot. Bai Ruozhu probably guessed what was going on, and later ran back home with the bamboo basket. At that time, Bai Yihong knew something was wrong when he saw the Heiyang flower. After asking around, it turned out that his daughter suffered a big loss, but fortunately, he had decided to let Changxing marry into their family, so everything was settled, and the ceremony was just 2 days away. But the family waited and waited for Changxing to come back, and they didn't see anyone until dark. Bai Yihong knew something was wrong, so he quickly found the village chief and asked people to help search the back hills, but they couldn't find him. They found some traces and a shoe dropped by Changxing on the back hillside. Everyone guessed that Changxing had accidentally slipped down the cliff. Some people thought Changxing was dead, but Bai Yihong's family kept trying to find him. Unfortunately, half a year passed, and Changxing was still missing, but Bai Ruozhu's belly was getting bigger and bigger. Bai Ruozhu felt terrible when she heard this. A girl who was so conservative in her past life getting pregnant before marriage, it's unfortunate. She couldn't even explain it to anyone. It was even more unfair than Dou E's situation. Girl, don't be sad. As long as we don't find his body, he's definitely still alive. Once he recovers, he'll come back to you. I still think that kid is a good man, Bai Yihong said, frowning. Bai Linpinger glared at him and started to say something, but in the end, she kept her mouth shut because she didn't want to make her daughter sad. Mom, Dad, I've already made up my mind. Whether Changxing comes back or not, we have to live our lives. I'll take good care of my children and be respectful to you in the future. Please don't always worry about me, or I'll feel bad. The old Bai Ruozhu might not understand it, but Bai Ruozhu had already noticed the white hair creeping out of Lin Pinger's temples. All right, we won't dwell on those things. We'll just try to live a good life, Lin Pinger said, wiping the corners of her eyes. Actually, Bai Ruozhu had other ideas in her mind. She remembered what her second brother had once said, saying that Changxing's life was unusual and advising her not to marry him. Unfortunately, her predecessor was just in love and didn't listen. Bai Ruozhu was thinking more. If that Changxing was dead, so be it. If he came back alive and wanted to be with her, she wasn't used to sleeping in the same bed with someone, especially that guy. When Bai Ruozhu thought about Changxing, the baby kicked her. She patted her belly, annoyed, and muttered, "It's not easy being pregnant with you. You're so heartless, always thinking about your dad. What if your dad's a big bad guy and wants to snatch you away in the future?" That the baby kicked wildly again. He didn't know whether he was protesting against Bai Ruozhu calling his father a bad guy, or whether he was objecting to his father taking him away. Either way, he was emotional. Chapter 19 Ruozhu's Clever Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the blink of an eye, the next day arrived. Lin Pinger and Bai Yihong were in the main room, an awkward silence hanging between them. They both stopped talking when Bai Ruozhu walked in. She immediately noticed something was off with her mother, who looked like she was simmering with anger. "Dad, what's wrong with Mom? Did you get her riled up again?" Bai Ruozhu asked with a playful smile, hoping to witness some loving interaction between them. After all, they were both in their 30s, not yet 40, young enough to still be falling in love, even by modern standards. Bai Yihong feigned innocence. "Hey, don't look at me. I wouldn't dare cross your mother." Bai Ruozhu grinned. Her dad was definitely henpecked. "Ruozhu, don't cry. Just take care of the baby," Lin Pinger said, forcing a smile, but Bai Ruozhu was increasingly convinced something was wrong. Her mother was usually an open book, wearing her feelings on her sleeve. She grabbed Lin Pinger's arm and gave it a playful tug. "Mom, I've been feeling kind of spacey lately, and for some reason, I'm super curious. If you don't tell me, I'll be obsessing over it, tossing and turning all night. How's my baby supposed to get any rest?" Lin Pinger shot Bai Ruozhu a look. I just didn't want you stressing out about it, honey. I was afraid you'd get upset. Bai Ruozhu's ears perked up. So something did happen. And it sounds like it involves me, which means I have to know. Seeing Bai Ruozhu's determined expression, Lin Ping'er glanced helplessly at Bai Yihong and sighed. It's about that fine the village chief levied on Lu San's daughter-in-law, the one where she had to stay with you. Bai Ruozhu rolled her eyes. You mean the Lu family hasn't coughed up the money yet? Lin Ping'er nodded. I was talking to your father about just dropping it. We're not exactly hurting for cash right now. It's not worth fighting over, and it's not like it'll make or break us. Bai Ruozhu bristled. She was a Taurus through and through, she wouldn't let anyone get away with anything. Giving up money that was owed to them? Absolutely not. No way. Bai Ruozhu blurted out, then caught herself when she saw her parents' surprised faces. She suddenly remembered that her predecessor hadn't given a hoot about household finances, let alone money. She quickly covered her tracks. Okay, look, if this money was just going to save us a headache, I'd be all for it. But have you guys thought about what message that sends? They'll think we're pushovers. They might come back and try to pull something again later. Bai Yihong frowned. We'd just ignore them, right? Lin Ping'er saw the bigger picture. I don't think it's that simple. Everyone in town knows about this. If we let it slide, people won't think we're being generous, they'll think we're backing down because we know we were wrong. Ruozhu's right, Lu San's daughter-in-law is no angel. Exactly. We wanted them to pay up to teach them a lesson. If they don't pay, what lesson are they learning? Bai Ruozhu was thrilled her mother understood. She caught her mother's approving gaze. It was gratifying to be seen. So, we're going to pick a fight with the Lu family? Bai Yihong asked, rubbing his temples. Bai Ruozhu just grinned. She already had a plan. Dad, here's what you're going to do. Bai Ruozhu whispered. Shortly after lunch, Bai Yihong headed to the village chief's house. Village chief Wang Shugen's eyes twitched when he saw Bai Yihong. What now? He was getting too old for this. Why couldn't these young folks just settle things themselves? Yihong, what brings you here? The village chief asked, feigning ignorance. Remembering his daughter's instructions, Bai Yihong smiled, bowed respectfully, and said, actually, it's no big deal. I was just talking to my wife, and we both figured it's better to make peace than war. We don't want any bad blood with the Lu family. The village chief nodded approvingly. The Bai family was known for their good sense. Even the son had good values. So we were thinking, what if the Lu family just pays us half the fine? Then we can all just move on, Bai Yihong continued. The village chief felt a flicker of irritation. So the Lu family still hadn't paid. His word wasn't worth as much as it used to be. The village chief has been talking about starting a school in the village, so we thought we could donate the money to the school instead. That way, it's not like we're just pocketing it. We can just say it was the Lu family's contribution, and hopefully, it'll inspire other villagers to donate too. Plus, it would ease the tension between us and the Lu family. What do you think? Bai Yihong recited, word for word, what his daughter had told him. The village chief's eyes lit up. He clapped his hand on his thigh. That's brilliant. If you're donating to the village school, the Lu family should be thanking you. He'd been racking his brain about how to fund the school. Bai Yihong's suggestion was perfect. If he took the lead, he was sure many other villagers would chip in. He'd be able to establish the school during his lifetime. We were going to donate some money ourselves, but you know our situation, Bai Yihong continued. So we were thinking, Ziho and I could donate our labor. We could build 4 sets of tables and stools for the school. In reality, the Bai family had planned to donate more money, especially Bai Yihong, who had always regretted not being able to study as a child. He had high hopes for the village school. However, they worried a large donation would raise eyebrows, so they decided to contribute their labor. They could make a few sets of tables and chairs, saving the school some money. The village chief slapped his thigh again, even harder this time. Ihong, this is a wonderful idea. On behalf of the whole village, I thank you. The old village chief grabbed Bai Ihong's hand, praising the Bai family's generosity. Don't you worry about a thing. I'll tell the Lu family. They'll be grateful. The two chatted a while longer. The village chief asked Bai Ihong for his thoughts on the school. The village chief would normally never have consulted him on something like this. He usually spoke with the village elders and maybe a few wealthy businessmen. But Bai Ihong never imagined that his daughter's idea would give him face. Finally, they walked out of the village chief's house together. Bai Ihong said goodbye and left, while the village chief couldn't wait to head over to the Lu's. Some villagers saw the village chief holding Bai Ihong's hand, looking particularly friendly. They asked curiously, "Hong, what were you doing at the village chief's house?" Beaming, Bai Ihong began to tell his story, following Bai Ruozhu's instructions to A.T. Chapter 20 Female Zhuge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Househan village, nestled in the mountains, was a place of simple folkways. With farming as the main occupation, villagers enjoyed gathering to chat during their free time, especially on cool summer evenings. Did you hear? Bai Xiucai's second son, Bai Ihong, donated the Lu family's lost money to the village to build a school. An old woman with a toothless mouth exclaimed. He's a man of few words, but he really cares about our village and its children. Heard it all right. And get this, Bai Ihong, being a smart cookie, made sure the donation was attributed to the Lu family so they wouldn't cause a stink. Plus he chipped in extra for the school's tables and chairs. A true scholar's son. The Lus can't hold a candle to him. A middle-aged man expressed his admiration for Bai Ihong. That's the truth. Better to make friends than enemies, right? Our village needs harmony. We don't need to stir up trouble, another woman chimed in, her words carrying a clear dig at Lu San's wife. A young man, eavesdropping nearby, hurried home with the news. What? Second brother donated all that money? He's just throwing it away. Exclaimed Mrs. Bai Lu, the family matriarch, her face contorted. Mr. Bai frowned. How many times have I told you? Stop talking like a country bumpkin. That the Bai family stood apart from the other villagers. Even Bai Ihong, who never formally studied, spoke proper Mandarin, unlike the villagers with their local slang. Mr. Bai, valuing dignity, insisted his family uphold their scholarly reputation. Mrs. Bai Lu rolled her eyes, still fixated on the lost money. Xiao San, are you sure? Every last cent. She demanded, turning to Bai Zheong. Bai Zheong, son of Bai Yiba and Wang, was the third grandchild of the Bai family, hence his nickname, Little Three. Bai Zheong pouted, go listen for yourself if you don't believe me. My ears are sharp. Bai Lu eyed her husband, wishing she could eavesdrop herself, but he forbade it. Mr. Bai sipped his tea, pondering the situation. Don't you get it? Ihong is bringing honor to the Bai family. The whole village is singing his praises. He paused, annoyed. All you can think about is money. Besides, it's not like he actually gave away his money. The old man, ever shrewd, kept his true intentions to himself. Bai Yiba and Wang exchanged irritated glances, resenting the old man's praise of Bai Ihong. Before they could voice their complaints, Mr. Bai spoke again. Having a school in the village is a great thing. Son, you're not doing anything worthwhile anyway. Might as well teach there. Bai Yiba shot up from his seat, all pretense of scholarly dignity gone, replaced by the look of a backwoods thug. Dad, are you serious? Teach a bunch of brats. That'll ruin my chances of ever getting anywhere. Besides, I'm too good for that dead-end gig. That the old man knew there was no money in it, but couldn't stand his eldest son lazing about. Bai Yiba hadn't achieved anything in years, and a steady income was appealing. Plus, his comment about their home being a dead end rubbed him the wrong way. Am I still the head of this family? If you refuse to teach, you can work in the fields and provide for yourself. I won't support a lazy bum. Mrs. Wang frantically gestured to Bai Ruozhu to be quiet. Bai Ruozhu rolled his eyes and said, "Dad, hold your horses. I ran into a classmate a few days ago. He's working at a fancy restaurant in Bai City. Said their family's looking for a tutor and he wants to recommend me. I can't pass up an opportunity like that, can I?" The old man hesitated. The wealthy families of Bai City were a different ballgame than the rural landowners they knew. "We'll see," he conceded. "Let's wait and see." Lin Pinger was in high spirits. Everyone asked about the family head visiting the village chief's house. She answered as her daughter instructed, and before evening, the whole village was buzzing. Several women visited, showering her and Bai Ruozhu with praise. Lin Pinger glanced at her daughter's closed door, convinced her daughter was a genius. The lost money, now a source of good publicity for the Bai family, had also done good for the village. Her daughter was a regular mastermind. Over the next few days, the village practically worshipped Bai Ruozhu's family. Many followed his example, donating money, supplies, or labor to the school. The village chief was ecstatic, giving Bai Ruozhu all the credit. Meanwhile, things weren't so rosy for the Liu family. Old Mrs. Liu, notorious for her stinginess, didn't want to part with the money. She'd hoped to get away with it, but now everyone knew the truth. Giving it up was inevitable, but why should she spend her money to boost the Bai family's reputation? Only after the village chief's third visit did Mrs. Liu reluctantly hand over the money. Gossip had already spread, accusing the Liu family of freeloading and not supporting the village school. The village chief even hinted that the Liu children might not be allowed to attend the school if they didn't pay up. Old Mr. Liu berated his wife for her embarrassing behavior and broke his pipe in anger. Only then did Mrs. Liu cough up the money. During this time, Bai Ruozhu ate well and rested to maintain her strength. She took walks in the village to get some exercise and gather news. Everything was going according to plan. A smile playing on her lips, she noticed a group of children gathered in the distance. Perhaps it was her pregnancy, but she felt a sudden interest in them. Holding her belly, she approached and saw a group of children bullying a boy who looked to be 5 or 6 years old. "Little Mute, playing in the mud like a fool. Little Mute, go home, you idiot." The children chanted, clapping their hands. The mud-covered boy didn't cry or react. He was expressionless. Bai Ruozhu saw the child's face and gasped in shock. It couldn't be.